Everyone stand. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. Crown County Superior Court now back in session. God save the state and all court may receive.
The record should reflect that the jury is asking the court will maintain the record of the state.
Nothing on behalf of the state, Your Honor.
Maintain the record for the you'll retake the stand. You may invite the jury. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
We thank you for coming back and with us today. Dr. Chaudhary remained found by oath to tell the truth, and she took yesterday as with the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Chaudhary, you testified yesterday about these standards or tests that were given to the defendant. Isn't that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you talked about the CAPS test and said it was the gold standard for determining post-traumatic stress disorder. Is that what you noted?
Yes.
And all of the answers that are given on this scale are self-reported. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And so there's no validation scale for this test. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And meaning that someone can lie about their symptoms simply by reporting them to you. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And in this scale, on the summary sheet, the only way I know how to direct your attention to it is by the fate number, which is 8279. And I'm sorry, it also at the top says CAPS, page 19, C-A-P-S.
Yes.
Page 19.
That's it.
And there are 3 traumatic events that are listed there. Is that correct?
Yes.
And who told you those?
Those were reported by Mr. Eric Campbell.
And they say pistol, bullets in garage, and witnessing murders of Faulkners. Is that what you reported there?
Yes.
And it's not reported on here that he mentions that his mom had a brain aneurysm. That's not listed on the scale.
Ma'am, the way that the test is designed, it's a very structured test. And so there are directions for what the examiner is supposed to read to the examinee. And in those directions, the first set of directions is to ask the individual to name the 3 worst traumatic events that occurred in their life. And so those were the 3 worst traumatic events that were reported by Mr. Eric Campbell to me.
And he doesn't report that one of the worst is that his mom was being removed from the home.
That's not what he reported in the top 3 traumatic events.
Another scale that you talked about was the TOMM, the T-O-M-M. And that was a particular measure to show malingering. Is that what that standard or what that scale is for?
Yes.
And this measure shows that a person is not lying on that particular test. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, malingering is the intentional production of symptoms for secondary gain. Is that a fair definition for malingering?
Yes.
And shouldn't malingering be considered separately and apart from any scale that's given to a person who's being interviewed?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. When somebody conducts a forensic examination, a forensic psychiatric examination, the examiner should be aware and examining the person that they're interviewing for symptoms or signs of malingering separate and apart from the test. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you would do that by asking questions and confronting the interviewee with contradictory information. Isn't that correct?
Perhaps. That's not the only way.
And isn't it accurate that this defendant had strong motivation to produce symptoms for secondary gain in a forensic examination view?
Yes, that's true.
And you didn't confront him with any information that was contrary to the information that he told you. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
On page 13 of your report, the second paragraph, where it starts, it seems.
I'm sorry, it looks like I have maybe left that folder on my desk at home. I don't actually have the copy of the report with me. Sorry about that. Oh, actually, I have it. It was the last folder.
I understand there's a lot of information. So if you can draw your attention to page 13.
Yes, ma'am.
And it says, it seems that the current medication regimen is helping to particularly reduce his PTSD symptoms, such that currently they are not causing functional impairment. Clearly, these have had a profound impact on him during the course of his lifetime. Is that what you wrote there?
Yes, that's right.
And lower in that paragraph, right before discussion, you list some scores. It says Axis 4, current 40, previous lowest 15, and previous highest 80.
Yes, that's a typographical error. It should say Axis 5.
And is that, so that should be Access 5?
Yes.
And what scale is that?
That's called the Global Assessment of Functioning Scale, GAF.
And an 80 functioning is quite high, isn't that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And when is it that you noted that he was functioning as an 80?
Based on the history and the documents and the interviews that I reviewed, I would say probably at some point shortly after he moved out of his father's home. And another example when he was functioning at his highest would be when he was working in Canada on the race, on organizing the race. In those instances, he appeared to be functioning at a very high level.
And so this profound impact on him during his lifetime, you realize that the defendant had a driver's license and drove a car, isn't that correct?
Yes.
In fact, the testimony is from the time that he was 16, he bought his own car and drove, isn't that correct?
Yes.
That he graduated from high school,
Yes.
he took difficult classes and scored well in them,
Yes.
specifically AP chemistry,
Yes.
that he had several long-term relationships, or at least relationships with girls, one that was long-term, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Went to the prom,
Yes.
was the best man at his best friend's wedding. He held down a job,
Yes.
had several jobs that he performed well in, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And as you mentioned, he moved to Canada for the Spartan races.
Yes.
And by all accounts, he was a great employee, isn't that correct?
Yes.
That he was a great employee for Gary Edmonds,
Yes.
that he was able to work consistently for him,
Yes.
that he noted that he was highly skilled, trustworthy, a normal kid, that he never suspected anything was going on. Did you read that?
Yes, I did. And in fact, I would have to say that it's quite remarkable what Mr. Eric Campbell was able to do on his day-to-day functioning, given the limitations that he was facing. One really good example of that would be that he didn't attend 9th or 10th grade of high school, and he was homeschooled, but it's quite remarkable that he was able to test into and didn't have to skip any grades. He was able to test into 11th grade for school. So yes, that's an example. All of these are examples where he's functioning highly.
And that he was in school, and that he had obtained his license to do HVAC work, or was well on his way to obtain that license. And that's not something that's an easy thing to do. Isn't that correct?
I'm not familiar with that process, ma'am.
He lived independently from his father for 3 years before this incident. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
But this is a profound impact on his life.
I think that you're mentioning examples that are of the highest functioning, and I think that that's important to recognize. It's also important to recognize that at his lowest functioning during the course of his lifetime, he had a GAF of 15. And those are times where people are unable to function in terms of their relationships and other areas of life.
And the 15 was noted after January the 1st of 2015.
Yes, but prior to that as well.
Where do you note that in your report?
I didn't note that in my report, ma'am. That's part of the history.
But it's not in the history, in your report, right? You didn't note that in your report.
No, this is diagnosis as well as severity. So that is not necessarily a scale that is included in the report. That's actually usually included in the diagnostic section.
And one that's not explained in your report?
Ma'am, it wasn't, there are plenty of instances during the history. I would say that the actual history and the other areas of documentation explain that.
So the bottom line is that you didn't address any inconsistencies or omissions in your report that you, in which you compiled all of the information that you considered and put forth your opinion. Isn't that correct?
Ma'am, my report's purpose was to determine the individual's mental state, and there is other records that are not. I'm not a crime scene investigator. My job was really to focus on identifying his psychiatric history, and in reviewing the information that I was given, as well as the information from central prison physicians, as well as the information from the state psychologist, and all of those findings corroborated my assessment and my diagnosis.
Your job was to assess his mental health at the time of his offense, or his mental state at the time of his offense. Isn't that what a forensic psychiatric exam is for?
Yes, that is.
And so it's not that you were assessing his mental state. That's just a psychiatric exam, correct?
Ma'am, the symptoms, the omissions that you're describing are consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as the passage of time. I didn't address those inconsistencies particularly because they were very consistent with what one would expect in somebody who experiences post-traumatic stress disorder.
So selective amnesia is a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder?
I wouldn't say it's voluntarily selective. I do think, and this is well known, is that there are episodic amnesia associated with traumatic events. And what we do know is that an individual can't select what those memories are. In fact, what I would say is if there was a selective recollection of the narrative that Mr. Eric Campbell provided me, I would wonder, why did he give me all this other detail? Why did he give me all this other graphic detail? Why did he share with me that there were times when actually he was lucid and that he knew what he was doing and that he was terrified? So I do think that the information that he provided me with was not something that was selective on a conscious level.
And you didn't address his motivation in giving you these inconsistencies?
Ma'am, I did address that on my in my report. Let me see if I could find the page. Okay. Yes, ma'am. On page 12, if you look at the it's the second to last paragraph, the last sentence. It says, Mr. Campbell demonstrated that his motivation was self-serving at times, and at other times he expressed such self-hatred that he appeared self-defeating.
But you don't describe when those times are and what that looked like and what those self-serving statements were. You don't go on to explain what those are.
Yes, I did not.
And you never challenged him on the plan that was noted in the jail calls, or the one that was listed on the back of the packing list that was in the discovery. Isn't that correct?
I did not.
And you never addressed his illegal activity in the fact that he claimed he was making meth with his father, or that he took down a meth lab. You never talked to him about that at all.
That's not in my report, but he did describe that to me.
And you knew that, but didn't list it in the report.
I did not think that that was pertinent to my mental status examination.
His decisions before he left on this trip with his father were not at all important in his mental state at the time.
I was not aware of those decisions. I do think that those decisions, as far as I'm aware, were made under duress and with unrealistic thoughts about what he would be able to achieve on the trip with his father.
You never addressed that Jose Reveles, who's a police officer in Texas, told Eric the morning that he left that he would be in trouble if he harbored his dad as a fugitive. You never addressed that with him.
Yes, ma'am, that's true.
And you never addressed the stolen Suburban or challenged him on that at all, did you?
I did not.
You never addressed his actions that were viewed on the video before and after his participation in these murders, did you?
No, I did not.
And in your notes, on Bates page 8274, when the defendant is talking to you about Hillsborough, he says, I was afraid he'd find her, talking about Polly, and kill her, and that is part of the reason that I came with him. You don't talk to him about the fact that they camped out in Hillsborough for 3 days looking for her, do you?
That's not in my report.
What's in the notes is not in your report at all, and you certainly do not talk to him or challenge him in your notes about that at all, do you?
That's right.
And you didn't challenge him on any of the prior statements that he made that showed he knew exactly why he and his father were at the Faulkner house, did you?
I did not.
And in fact, you didn't challenge him on any of the statements he made that they lied in wait for their perfect time to strike the Faulkners, did you?
That was not part of the history that was reported to me.
But it was part of the history that was reported to several law enforcement officers. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And on page 8256 of your notes, in addressing the defendant's entire history, in your handwritten notes on the third paragraph down, on 8256, the paragraph starts, last time I ever got in a fight. Can you see where I am?
Ma'am, my pages are not numbered the way that yours are, so it'll take me just a moment to find it.
Certainly. It's,
Do you have a date for those notes? That would help me.
yes, ma'am. It appears to be on November the 29th of 2016.
Okay, thank you. Let me look for that.
It's not 6th page, but that's counting front and back.
Right. Oh, yes, I found it.
So it says, last time I ever got in a fight, he hit me first, and I waited till his back was turned and knocked him in the head a few times. And he says, my father was giving me attaboys for fighting. Do you see that paragraph?
I don't see it, but I remember writing it, and I've seen it before. Let me just take a
You
second
didn't
here.
ask him about...
Yeah, there it is.
You don't note in here any evidence of hypervigilance when this happened.
No.
And you don't note any evidence of disassociation when this happened.
No, I don't. I don't have a note of that.
And you don't note that he, after being assaulted, that he was frozen and unable to react, do you?
No, I don't. But further along in on the same page, it says the idea of him watching, which made me scared, which is an indicator of not being able to relax, and that's a symptom of hypervigilance.
But he waited until the person had turned his back, and he made a conscious decision to knock him in the head a few times.
Yes.
You rely completely on what the defendant told you, inconsistencies, omissions, and biases, and you never confronted him with any other information. Isn't that correct?
That would be inaccurate, ma'am.
All the things that I've asked you about, you had this collateral information, and you didn't confront him on the inconsistencies.
Yes, I would say I didn't confront him, but I would say that I didn't only rely on his self-report.
But you don't note those inconsistencies in your report.
That's accurate.
You were hired by the defendant in this case, isn't that correct?
Yes.
How much are you being paid by the hour?
My rate is set by the state.
And how much is that?
That is $310 per hour.
And the truth is, you're not qualified to conduct a forensic psychiatric exam, isn't that correct?
I'm not board certified in forensic psychiatry, ma'am, but I am qualified.
You haven't taken the year-long fellowship that's required to even sit to be board certified for forensic psychiatry in order to be board certified in that, isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I think it's important to identify that there's no legal requirement for any physician in any specialty to be board certified in order to practice in their field, in both clinically as well as in other settings. I think that by completing the general psychiatry training, which includes a forensic psychiatric training component, that is sufficient to allow me to be board eligible and board certified in general and adult psychiatry. And the general component includes the forensic psychiatry.
Sure. So you're certified as a psychiatrist, and you've worked in mental health in student health at Duke University for 20 years.
Yes.
20 years.
I've worked with young adults.
But you started your private practice through Duke or otherwise in 2013 to do these exams.
Yes.
And you have not sat through the year-long fellowship. That's an intensive program that teaches you how to conduct these examinations. Isn't that a fair statement?
Yes, that's true.
And you are required to take that fellowship before you can sit in order to be board certified. Isn't that a fair statement?
Yes, that's fair.
And you're not subject to peer review. Isn't that correct?
Could you explain that further,
I mean,
please?
is there anybody else that looks back over what you've done?
I would say that if I need to consult on a report, yes, I would consult with a peer.
But that's only if you choose to do so.
Yes.
I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
Dr. Chaudhary, other forensic psychiatrists, are there people who do this work and not board certified?
Yes, that is true.
Now, has your practice been primarily focused on diagnosing, treating, and healing people who were diagnosed with mental disorders?
Yes, I would say that's accurate.
And do
I have no question about my diagnosis in this case.
And based on the information you've reviewed from the doctors at Central Prison who are not involved in this case one way or the other, do you have any question about their diagnosis?
I have no question about their diagnosis.
And did the psychologist at Central Prison, did her testing appear to support your diagnosis?
Yes, sir. Dr. Fox's testing supported not only the diagnosis I made for Eric Campbell, but her testing also indicated that he was not malingering, he was not falsifying his responses.
Now, you talked a little bit about your objectives in the case. Do you remember how many pages of information you reviewed in this case?
I couldn't tell you the number of pages. I would say just remembering what the files were, I would say at least 3,000 pages, possibly more.
And when you reviewed those pages, did you take notes or did you just rely on your memory?
There were parts that I would highlight or underline, but most of it was relying on my memory.
Now, when you talked a little bit about the prosecutor asked you certain things about your report, when she was talking about a fight that Mr. Campbell described to you, was that something that had happened recently?
No, sir.
And was that like an elementary or middle school
Yes, sir.
encounter you had?
That's when he was a kid.
Do you remember how many times Eric Campbell's been interviewed in this case? Do you have any idea how many different law enforcement agencies and state agencies have interviewed him?
I would guess at the minimum 15 to 20 times, perhaps more.
And
Yes. Yes, sir.
Dr. Chaudhary, I'm showing you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 52. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is that?
That is a letter that I prepared summarizing my findings regarding Mr. Eric Campbell's mental state.
And is the title Preliminary Psychiatric Evaluation?
Yes, sir.
And was that the last letter or report summarizing your findings
Yes,
that
sir.
you provided in this case?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time I'd move to introduce that as Defendant's Exhibit 52.
You did.
No, sir.
Okay.
If you would, Dr. Chaudhary, prosecutor asked you something about the address that you listed as Mr. Campbell's last address. I think it's page.
I think it's on page 2.
It's on page 2. And what did you list as? What was that under identifying data?
Yes, sir.
And turn to page 4, if you would.
Yes, sir.
In the fourth paragraph down, what does it say?
It says, Eric states he moved out of the family home at age 19, but I didn't move far enough. After I got my first job, parentheses, customer services with Dish Network, close parentheses, within the first week, my dad kicked me out.
Dr. Chaudhary, you mentioned this, prosecutor asked you about this GAF Axis 5 information at the bottom of under the diagnosis part of the report, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned that there were times when, and the GAF, is that just something you come up with off the top of your head?
No, sir. This is a rating scale that was designed by the American Psychiatric Association DSM-4 task force, and there are clear benchmarks for different scores.
When his scores were the highest, were those the times he was away from his father?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And when his scores were the lowest, when were they the lowest?
I would say throughout episodes in his childhood, in particular, I would say during the late adolescence part when he was not able to go to school. But I would also say at the time of the events leading to the present charges.
And it goes without saying, when even in your clinical practice, do you consider whether a person might have a secondary motivation?
Oh, yes, sir.
And would one of those motivations be to get pharmaceuticals or something like that in the clinical practice?
Yes, people can have a variety of motivations.
Now, and so do you make efforts to determine whether a person is using that secondary motivation, which is obvious, and developing symptoms around that secondary motivation?
Yes, I do.
And would that be the clinical rating scales that you consider?
Yes.
And based on your review of the record, did the people who evaluated Mr. Campbell for the state, did they consider those things as well?
Yes, they did.
And was that in Dr. Fox's report?
Yes, sir, it was.
Now, did you, as part of this, you considered lots of information. Did you also, now, Dr. Chaudhary, as part of your review, did you also review a transcript of the transport of Edward Campbell from the jail in West Virginia to court?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you also review the transcript of transport of Edward Campbell from West Virginia to Grand County?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes, sir, I did.
And were those things you considered as collateral sources in this case?
I'm going to object to this line of questioning.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll excuse you to the jury for just a few moments while they don't discuss the case among yourselves. Neither should you form or express any opinion about any issue in this file or in this county. That's your excuse.
Chaudhary, did you consider the interview with, I'm sorry, it's entitled Interview Eddie Campbell, First Lieutenant DSP.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you could turn to page 6 on the interview that Campbell does.
Yes, sir.
And does that appear to say, under Pendleton, and I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, it's the seventh line up from the bottom where it says Pendleton.
Yes, sir.
It says, why did Eric pick that house in North Carolina?
Yes.
And does it say Campbell, he didn't pick a house in North Carolina?
Yes.
And Pendleton said, I thought he was involved in picking the house.
Yes, sir.
Campbell says, no, sir.
Yes, sir.
And then on the next page, was that consistent with your understanding of what Eric Campbell told you, that he didn't pick the house to rob?
That's correct.
And the next page, page 7, did you review where it says Campbell, he wanted to make sure I was okay?
Yes, sir.
Because he saw me emotionally distraught because my oldest boy was, don't go.
Yes.
Did you review that?
Yes, sir, I did.
And is that consistent with what Eric Campbell told you?
Yes, sir, it is.
And based on your training in psychiatry, is that consistent with the way a lot of children of abused parents think? Or,
Yes.
and on page 9,
Yes, sir.
the 7th line down, it says, no, Eric shouldn't be going to jail. He shouldn't be in jail. He hasn't done anything. He is not.
Yes, sir.
And does the next page in the middle of the page where it says Campbell, does it say, okay, suppose Eric really has not done anything?
Yes, sir.
And now, is that something you at least reviewed in this case, sort of like the things that the prosecutor asked you about, the specifics of the interviews and things?
Yes, sir.
And then on the next page at the bottom, you see where Lieutenant Deeks says, sure, well, Eric has been very, very cooperative.
Yes, sir.
And was that, in your interaction with Mr. Campbell, did he appear to at least be trying to give you valid information, good information?
Yes, very much so.
And at the bottom of page 18,
Yes, sir.
does it say those people I killed under Campbell?
Yes. Is that the last line where it says, I know there is, because there aren't any fingerprints on anything that had to do with those deaths, those people I killed?
And Dr. Chaudhary, on page 36,
Yes, sir.
in the, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th line from the bottom, it says, Campbell, Eric kept speeding up and following me.
Yes, sir.
He was scared. He didn't know what to do.
Yes, sir.
And did Eric Campbell tell you that he was scared of his father?
Yes, sir, he
Made
did.
it clear to you that part of his motivation was that he was terrified and wanted to survive?
Yes, that's accurate, sir.
And does he say at the top of page 39, 3 lines down, I was distraught, I was mentally out there, otherwise what else would a person do something like that?
Yes, sir.
Did it appear from did these officers make statements about Eric's cooperation during this interview? Do you remember?
Yes, that's documented in these transcripts, sir.
And on page 47, 6 lines from the bottom, it says Campbell. Excuse me, I talked to my oldest son yesterday, or 2 days ago. And the next line where he speaks, he was pissed off about Eric involved in my shift.
Yes, sir.
And on the next page, page 48, at the bottom, where it says Pendleton is about the 6th line up.
Yes, sir.
Why would I make him ask? I got to ask that why. And Campbell says, steal the identity in a very professional way.
Yes, sir.
And does he talk down on page 49 about she grabbed the tip of the crossbow and it went off?
Yes, sir.
And on page 55, from the 3rd line down, does Mr. Campbell talk about first, I'll explain the procedure first, and here first I take pictures of the hairline. Did he talk about the way, he appears to be talking about the way he makes a mask?
Yes, sir, he did.
On page 57, at the top, the 3rd line down, it says deeds. He doesn't, no, doesn't have a whole lot of life experiences.
Yes, sir. I think that's Officer Dietz.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. He's naive, like I said.
Yes.
I couldn't take it away from the kids. It's farther down on that same page.
Yes, sir.
Is this Mr. Campbell talking about Eric Campbell, sort of the way he perceives him?
Yes.
Does he also talk on page 59 about manipulating someone to get an attorney for his son?
Yes, sir.
At the bottom. Is manipulation, does that appear to be a pattern with Mr. Campbell as it relates to people close to him?
Absolutely, sir.
Now, I want to go to the transcript of
Give you what's been marked as Exhibit 4, Exhibit 13. If you'll take that.
Okay, thank you.
Now, on the Defendant's Exhibit 13, the transcript on page 2,
Yes,
the fifth from the bottom,
yes,
does it say he just came on the trip because he saw his dad emotionally distraught?
yes, that's what it says.
During this, these discussions with Detective Campbell and T, does Mr. Campbell, based on your memory, talk about his drug problems in the past?
Yes, sir.
Does he talk about, on page 20 at the bottom, the last Ed Campbell statement, the second to last sentence, then when she started carrying the phone around again in her hand, I started going through her shit, I wrote through a software protective program. Based on your experience, is people who are trying to control others, is use taking their phones or monitoring their phones one of the tactics they use?
Yes, sir. That's one of the tactics of spousal emotional abuse, controlling tactics.
And does he talk on the other phone? So I took both of her phones from her?
Yes, sir. In fact, one of the things that I would say is remarkable is that not only was he getting sort of breaking into her phones, but he was aggregating her phone use records and.
Now, again, on page 31, does at the top under Ed Campbell,
Yes, sir.
and does it talk about He says, I wasn't going to let him get arrested.
Yes, sir.
He says that boy didn't have anything to do with North Carolina bullshit.
Yes, sir.
Now, and does it say in the next time it says Ed Campbell, he has some suspicion of things, but I'm an authoritative dad, as you might expect. He's not going to question me. He's trying to get me to go back to Texas. I knew he figured he's a smart boy. He figured that car was stolen. He's not stupid. He never questioned me. That's disrespectful. Now, would that be consistent with your, at least, your understanding of the pattern of Edward Campbell's relationship with other people, and especially Eric Campbell?
Yes, sir. In fact, what Eric Campbell shared with me was that when he asked Ed Campbell why he was changing the license plates, Eric looked at his dad, and his dad actually held a screwdriver up to his head and growled at him and threatened him. And Eric shared with me that he was terrified because his father had injured him with a screwdriver before. And so he stopped questioning his father.
Now, on page 37,
Yes, sir.
does the third line down,
Yes.
there's been a lot of, you've been cross-examined a great deal about whether Mr. Edward Campbell was physically and emotionally abusive toward his children and family. Does this say, yes, I bruised my children, punishing them? I have. The older ones, too, I bruised them. Now, would that lead you to believe he's bruised the younger ones?
Yes, sir.
Like it said of siblings?
Yes, sir.
They know I'll wig out on them if they're disrespectful. Is that what he said?
Yes, sir.
What he appears to have said? Would that be consistent with the history that you gathered from the collateral sources as well as Mr. Eric Campbell?
Yes, that he had a very volatile temper, and that he would unpredictably become very violent to family members.
And then on page 38, down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, from the bottom, it says Ed Campbell. My wife would say every little bruise I put on all the kids, she'd take a picture of it, and I found. Wow, why are you collecting this information?
Yes, sir.
And then he says in the next line, I'm not a child abuser.
Yes, sir.
Now, at the very last line, I don't have to spank my kids because they know I'll rip them a new asshole and it works. It really does. When I do spank them, I beat the shit out of them.
Yes, sir.
It sounds bad, but yeah, I put grab marks on them. Was there a grab mark noted in the medical report from Eric Campbell, who was 8 years old, that the prosecutor questioned you about?
Yes, sir.
And they never backtalked. Did he talk in here about, on the next page, page 39, at the very, on the first paragraph,
Yes, sir.
one time one of my nephews, he wasn't going to do dishes. He was 16 and didn't want to do dishes when it was his turn to do dishes.
Yes.
And then in the next line he said, no, I'm not doing the dishes. I said, what? And I said, I'm not going to do all these dishes. So I picked him up, turned him upside down, and I did dishes with his head. Is that what he said?
Yes, sir. That's what he said.
And he still hates me to this day. Is the next one.
Yes, sir.
Now, page 40, on the next page, does he talk about the way he treats other people's children at the top?
Yes, sir. I believe he's referring to the pastor's child.
And now, one of the issues, there's been some testimony to about the use of cell phones around Mr. Evan Campbell.
Yes, sir.
And on page 48, 6 lines from the top where it says Ed Campbell, you can come to my home, take your battery out of your cell phone if you have one.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Was that something that Mr. Campbell, Eric Campbell, told you that he left his cell phone home and the reason why?
Yes.
Did he say it was at his father's?
Yes. Yes, sir. He did.
You know, page 106 at the bottom, did he talk about, I'll give you a hand, I taught my son currently with my kids.
I'm sorry, sir. What page is that?
106 at the very bottom.
Yes. I've taught my son parables with a belt, with my fist. I've taught him a lot of different ways. Now, I've never really punched him, but I punched my older son a couple of times.
And does he say he never punched me back, though?
That's right. He never punched me back, though.
Now, the prosecutor asked you a lot of questions about collateral information, Dr. Chaudhary. Was the basis of the post-traumatic stress disorder the history of the child abuse and the chaotic, the pattern of chaos in the home?
Yes, sir. That was the basis.
And was that the basis for you as well as the doctors in the prison?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And would it appear that Mr. Campbell in those transcripts was confirming a lot of the stuff that you had learned through the CPS reports, Child Protective Service, as well as from Mr. Eric Campbell?
Yes, sir. It's actually quite remarkable that Mr. Ed Campbell was boasting about hitting children. He was actually boasting about how badly he had beaten, I think, the pastor's son, and threw him in the pond and chased him down and slapped him so hard you could see hand marks on his legs. So it's quite remarkable that not only is he reporting that he did it, but he seems to be quite proud of that.
And now I know that he talked a little bit about the things that happened at the home, but did those things appear to be consistent with the things that Eric Campbell told you about at least his role in it? Maybe not the details, but his role in the father's death.
Yes, sir.
I think that's the question.
Dr. Chaudhary, referring to, we present exhibit 4, the interview of Mr. Campbell with First Lieutenant DSB.
Yes, ma'am.
On page 18 and 19, and again, you say that you reviewed these as part of your collateral information before you completed your report.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. But not before I interviewed Eric.
Before you interviewed Eric,
No, I said, but not before I interviewed Eric.
but before you completed your report.
Yes, ma'am.
And on page 18, it says Campbell says, and I think you know there's proof for that too. I know there is cause, there ain't any fingerprints or anything that had to do with those deaths. Those people I killed. Did you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And on the next page, page 19,
Yes.
6 down, Campbell, when he jumped in that fucking truck, I even put the blue buckets in the, no, he moved the blue buckets, the fingerprints might be on the blue buckets on the outside of the, but that's about it. And, do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And Deed says, yeah, right. Campbell says, but there's nothing. I'm sorry, he says, right, yeah. And Campbell says, but there's nothing on the, and he says, Deed says, well, now, he told me he helped load the bodies. I mean, just so you know, I don't want you to jam yourself up here either. And Campbell says, thank you, I appreciate you. And Deed says, he's like, I say he's been cooperative, so, you just got to try to. And Campbell says, I appreciate you, sir, thank you very much. You see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And Deed says, try to make sure you don't. And Campbell says, I understand. And Deed says, don't jam yourself up. You see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And at the end of that page, Pendleton said, is the only thing that can help you to help Eric, because I think we know what Eric's done based on what he's told us his truthfulness. And then later on the next page, Pendleton says, and if you try and manipulate what happened, even though you're taking responsibility for it. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And then the next thing that Mr. Pendleton says, or I'm sorry, Captain Pendleton says, is when you try and manipulate the facts of what's known and what's not known. And Campbell says, I understand what you're saying. And then Captain Pendleton says, trying to make Eric, to help Eric make it look worse, that can ultimately make Eric look worse.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
Campbell says, I understand what you say. I agree with you. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And on the next page, on page 21, Mr. Campbell says, I agree this. You just said everything I needed to hear when you told me that he helped load the bodies. You see that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line from the top, page 21.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong page. Yes, ma'am.
And later down that page, 7 from the top, Mr. Campbell said, what else did Eric say he did? And Deed says, I can't go into a hole. And Mr. Campbell says, I understand. You see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And on page 22, Mr. Campbell says, thank you for saying the one. You see that?
Yes.
And Mr. Deed says, I just don't want you to, and Campbell said, jam myself up. I heard you. Do you see that?
Yes.
believe Mr. Tyndall asked you about this, but Mr. Campbell, forward from the bottom of that, says, yes, sir, recommendations on how I can manipulate one of them to get an attorney for my son. You see that?
Yes.
And on page 64, second from the bottom, when Mr. D says, you got to keep in mind, is Eric, Eric is an adult. He can make whatever kind of decisions. And Mr. Campbell says, exactly, yeah. And on the next page, Mr. D says, you know what I'm saying. And Campbell says, he already has. And then D says, he has. He's made decisions, adult decisions already. And Campbell says, yes, sir. And Mr. Campbell says, but if you can manipulate the DA or not manipulate, influence the DA so I can see my son, that would be appreciated. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
In fact, he was pretty interested several times about when he could talk to Eric, wasn't he?
It appears so, yes.
You didn't write anything in your report about Ed Campbell's statements to law enforcement.
No, I didn't.
You didn't write anywhere in your notes about Edward Campbell's statements to law enforcement, did you?
Ma'am, I covered that material on the front page of my report where I reviewed the discovery files, and this was included in the discovery files. I didn't refer to it specifically.
You never refer to it specifically.
That's correct.
And you refer to other collateral sources specifically in your report. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Your Honor, I don't have anything further. I renew my objection and would like to be heard. Your Honor, first of all these statements are hearsay. And they are trying to do an end around on getting around what the court has already deemed to be hearsay, except for the several statements that have been ruled upon in Detective McPhee's interview. But even in this setting, it is certainly inappropriate for Dr. Chaudhary to talk about any of this because although she says she reviewed the discovery files, Your Honor, there is nothing in what we were given by the defense in Dr. Chaudhary's reports or Dr. Chaudhary's raw notes that gives any indication that she relies specifically upon these statements in making her opinion. She doesn't question Eric Campbell about them. She doesn't refer to any consistencies in her report. She doesn't refer to how these statements bolster Eric Campbell's version of events. She doesn't address how these statements of Ed Campbell's are at all related to Eric's diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, or how she gets to her diagnosis and to her conclusion with these specific statements. It appears from what she's testified to that she ignored the rest of the amount of discovery that she was given. These other things that are listed here. And she never confronted the defendant with those. She has not relied, there has been no showing that she relied upon these other than what she has said here. There is no indication in her report, there is no indication in her notes that she relied on these statements at all in forming the basis of her opinion that she testified to yesterday. And none of this information came out on direct examination. She never said anything about Ed Campbell's about his statements and that she had relied upon them, Your Honor. And I ask that you sustain the objection and not let her testify to any of this information.
Yeah, it doesn't go just one way. Ms. Capp spent all yesterday afternoon asking Dr. Chaudhary about specific statements in collateral information that has not been introduced. She asked specifically about the interview with Sergeant Baker. She asked specifically about the transcript of the interview with Detective McPhee. She characterized it, what Eric was saying, as these are this is how we conclude he spoke. In other words, they planned this at Home Depot. It doesn't go one way. And when the state asks these questions, we have a right to go back and explain other sources that would be consistent with what Dr. Chaudhary has testified to. Now, a lot of the time the state spent yesterday, and I'm not sure how much time, was in an effort to defeat the diagnosis that everyone except Dr. Wolf, and I guess Dr. Fox hasn't diagnosed him, but the report certainly reads like her test indicated he has post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of the time was in an effort to show that the violence in the home, the chaos, and the emotional inconsistency and depravity didn't exist or was not as bad as described. And clearly in this document, Edward Campbell, out of the blue, volunteers that it was as bad, if not worse. Certainly, Mr. Edward Campbell makes statements, and the state can argue, and I'm sure would argue, that they're self-serving or intended to benefit Eric Campbell. At the same time, these are things that were provided to Dr. Chaudhary. I mean, there's a lot of documents. I'm sure she can't recount every single document. And that's if the state's expert testifies, it's going to be the same thing. They recount a lot of stuff in their report that is based on out-of-court statements that are interviews. They specifically note Holly Campbell's statements. And all of these things are, help form the basis for an opinion. It's not just one source, and you don't get to just say, we're going to pinpoint a few items or a number of items that tend to undermine your opinion without our ability to come back and point out items that support her. And these documents, of course, I think we have a separate reason to introduce them, but as far as with Dr. Chaudhary, I think their information she was provided, that she considered, and the state on cross-examination made it very clear that these items are relevant to this case, and we should have the opportunity to show that there's a flip side to what it's saying. And of course, an expert can't recount every single detail of the case in her report. We certainly should have the opportunity to counter the state's argument about these other collateral sources.
Your Honor, Dr. Chaudhary, in her own testimony here on the in-court hearing, said that it was quite remarkable what Edward Campbell said about Ed's behavior and the things that he's talking about, specifically about the cell phone and all these other things. It's so remarkable that she didn't remark it about it. She didn't make any remarks about it at all in her report or in her notes. I mean, she just ignores it altogether, as she does with most of the other information that she had. But as for the other testimony and things that have been testified to, the statements that were made to Detective McPhee and to Detective Baker, the defendant acknowledged. He acknowledged that he had made those statements. He did that on the stand before Dr. Chaudhary ever testified. Holly Campbell has testified here today. There has been information that has been presented through the Department of Social Services. Those were testified to. Your Honor, in addition, these statements by Edward Campbell are not reliable. They're manipulative. They're guarded. They're motivated. The defense even introduced Defense Exhibit 50, Edward's evaluation or the family evaluation, and Dr. Chaudhary talked about how unreliable Edward was, that he was manipulative, that he said exactly the thing that he needed to say to get his way. That is in evidence, Judge. These statements are hearsay. They're not reliable. She did not rely on them, or there's no indication whatsoever that she relied on these statements in forming her opinion and rendering a conclusion.
No, sir. The objection is sustained. There's no evidence that this testimony from this witness informed Dr. Chaudhary's opinion in any way, or she relied upon it in any way. And this evidence is not necessary for an understanding of the basis of her testimony and her opinion in this particular case. Likewise, this court has taken a look at the statements made by the defendant not by the defendant, by Mr. Campbell, and is concerned about their trustworthiness. And it's clear that the motivation of Mr. Campbell was to be for the benefit of his son. The court finds that he is unavailable because he committed suicide, and he makes statements in here that in these statements about making these statements so that if something happened to him, they would be the officers would be available for testimony. He's not available. I find that this is more prejudicial than it is probative or anything contained therein, and that pursuant to Rule 403, that it would not be appropriate for this matter to come before the jury. To this ruling, the defendant accepts and accepts.
And Your Honor, we just note the record we do accept under the 6th and 14th Amendment.
For sure. Anything further? You may invite the jury, please, sir. Witness representative.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Chaudhary, when some of the questions from the state had to do with the diagnosis of Eric Campbell prior to Central Prison diagnosis in 2015, is based on his age, is that a surprise that he hasn't been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder?
It's not surprising that he hasn't been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder prior to this.
And why would that?
I would say that he was able to maintain a degree of functioning. However, that there were patterns that were erratic. I think if he had actually experienced other, most of the time when people experience post-traumatic stress disorder, they don't come to the doctor and say, I have post-traumatic stress disorder. That's very different than, for example, somebody who is experiencing depression or somebody who might be experiencing other versions of anxiety. And so most often what occurs is somebody will come to the doctor and will say, I don't feel well, I can't function as well as I would like to. And in the course of the evaluation of that, the diagnosis of PTSD emerges. Most people will, and in particular for Mr. Eric Campbell, the bulk of his symptoms were, as we said yesterday, not the presence of certain features or certain symptoms, although he certainly had them, but the bulk of his symptoms were the absence of what one would consider just normal ability for cognition and reactions.
Now, I'm going to ask Richard.
Yes, sir.
Treat exhibit.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Chaudhary, I'm going to approach with this to mark this defense for you that's already been introduced. And this was the initial evaluation for the psychiatric or psychological report that you reviewed. You mentioned earlier that Eric had reported to you that he had been hit in the head with the butt of a gun.
Yes, sir.
And would you read under medical and physical history, page 3, was there a report of him having stitches several years earlier?
Yes, it says Eric reported that he once went to the hospital after he sprained his leg while skiing in Colorado. He also stated that he had stitches in his forehead several years ago.
He didn't say he went to the hospital to get those stitches, did he?
That's correct.
Dr. Chaudhary, did you discuss with Mr. Campbell his father's request that he leave phones and things behind before they took the trip?
Yes.
Do you remember what kind of phone he had?
The way that he described it to me was that I had an old phone that I used to leave in the pickup truck. He didn't tell me the exact kind of phone.
Was it your impression that it was a smartphone or something else?
My impression was that it was an old phone and probably not a smartphone.
Now, and Dr. Chaudhary, when you reviewed this case, did you at least make every effort to review all the information that was provided for you?
I certainly did.
And are you confident about your diagnosis in this case?
Yes, sir, I'm confident about the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder.
And are you confident about your conclusions related to his mental state at the time of the offense?
Yes, sir, based on what's scientifically known about post-traumatic stress disorder, with a basis of what that scientific understanding is of post-traumatic stress disorder, it makes sense that Mr. Eric Campbell acted the way he did at the time of this offense.
Nothing further.
Thank you, Barbara.
No, sir.
Thank you, Ben. You stand there. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our morning recess. At this point, during this morning recess period, it is your duty not to talk among yourselves about this case. Do not talk to the parties, the witnesses, or the lawyers about anything at all. Further, do not to talk to anyone else, allow anyone else to talk with you, to say anything in your presence about this case. If anyone communicates to you in any way, let the sheriff know about it and come in. Dr. Chaudhary, you just stay like this with me. Further, don't do any individual research or investigation on your own about any use of touching on this trial. Stay away from smartphones, and do not form or express an opinion about this case during this time. That, while everyone else will remain seated, I'm going to excuse the 17 of you and ask that you return and assemble in the jury room at 11:15 this morning. Again, we go by this clock. That's your excuse.
Goes back in session, just keep the seats.
Hey, records and reflect the jury's action in the courtroom. Anything records say?
Nothing on behalf of the state, Your Honor.
You've had records?
It would be our intention to call Captain Tennant from the West Virginia State Police to offer the evidence
understand you object, but we haven't made a voir dire on that now. And we've accepted the evidence in this case, the two transcripts that have been marked, I think it's Exhibit 4 and 12, whatever.
14 or 12, I can't remember.
4 and 13.
Yeah.
4 and 13?
4 and
Yes, sir.
13. And also, we would introduce, the videos. If the court feels that it needs to see the videos to make a decision, then we'll offer it if the court can make a decision based on it. We won't. You know, we moved into this 53A, the videos of that transfer.
Is the state object to that?
Well, which one is which?
It's all the transport from West Virginia to North Carolina. That's a huge box. So it's split up. The first 5 hours is on one video, the second 4 hours is on the other.
And my understanding is that the audio from West Virginia jail to the courthouse is not very good for that.
We do have it. We can offer it, but it is a very low quality.
I think we ought to offer it just to clarify that.
So that would be 54. Mark the transport video from West Virginia to North Carolina, 53A and 53B.
We're certainly going to object to that.
Okay.
And I'll hand these to the clerk, Your Honor.
Yes. Voir dire exhibits. I've had an opportunity to review these. So I'll be glad you object up to that hearing.
Judge, I would just renew the arguments that I have made several times now about both of these transports. I believe the first in dealing with the transport of Ed Campbell in West Virginia, there are many statements, and I take it that we're dealing with the statements that have been highlighted, or just in general.
We would offer the entire videos in every state.
There are many statements in here. It's all hearsay, and there are many statements in here that are not against Ed Campbell's penal interests. And the statements that are, Your Honor, are unreliable. There's no internal indicia of reliability. There's no indicia of reliability at all. I would draw your attention specifically to page 6. Again, he's talking about he didn't pick a house. Again, these are not against penal interest. There's no indication or indicia of reliability in those. Again, on page 19, 20, 21, and 22, the conversation that Mr. Campbell has with Lieutenant Deeds and Captain Pendleton, in where he basically is trying to, again, manipulate the situation. The officers show that they know that he's already lying about things, and he decides at that point that he wants to know what more that Eric had told him so he could make his statements fall in line with what Eric's statements would be. He's also concerned in this statement about needing to talk to Eric, wanting to talk to him in order so they could get their story straight. There's certainly indications in here that he wants to talk to the DA. He's concerned about talking to his own attorney. He wants to go through the media. It's all about manipulation, and it's all about manipulation because he knows that he was not going to ever stand trial for these charges. He indicates that in this, he talks to Doug McPhee and Steve Hayes about that at all. There is no independent indicia of reliability, Judge, and that is certainly the requirement for hearsay, the hearsay exception, as to statements against penal interest, and also statements that are entered under the residual hearsay exception. They all must have the indicia of reliability, and that these are prejudicial, and that they do not meet muster on that test as well. I would offer the same arguments for the statements that were given to Detective Fish and Detective Hayes. He again talks all throughout this of things that that show his bias, show his motivation to manipulate the situation, how he's trying to manipulate the situation, and how he is giving statements that do not comply at all with the hearsay exceptions. And we ask that you do not let either one of these statements in.
Yes, Your Honor. As an initial matter, I would submit we are offering these statements for their truth, and we would ask the court to rule that they are an exception to hearsay, and I'll discuss that further. But we're also offering them for non-hearsay purposes. We're offering them to corroborate evidence that was heard in this case. We're offering them to show the basis of our expert's opinions. We're also offering for the non-hearsay purpose of letting the jury see Ed Campbell and know who he is, what kind of person he is, what he looks like, the way he interacts with other people. And you can get that from watching these videos. You can see Ed Campbell is missing teeth. You can see that he is difficult to deal with, that he says inappropriate things, that he says things that are unexpected. We offer, I'll address this later, we will be offering that when he says, I beat my children, that he was being truthful, that that's true, and the jury should take that as truth and believe Eric Campbell when he said the same thing, that his father beat him. But even if the court doesn't allow it for that purpose, we think the jury can see it to say, look, this is the kind of person that tells police officers that he beats children. That kind of person is a violent, scary person, whether or not it's true. That's a threatening, scary, mean person. And that's our theory in this case, that is who Ed Campbell is. He talks about drug use to police officers. That suggests, for non-hearsay purposes, that this person doesn't care about other people. This person is unafraid. He's telling police officers about his drug use. He's saying that those interactions, we believe, would be permissible for a non-hearsay purpose. And they corroborate other important facts that are said in this case. Now, as far as for the hearsay purpose, we would offer these. The first under a statement against interest. And I know the court has reviewed cases that I previously provided on all these topics. As far as a statement against interest, now the test is it against your interest, and are there indicia of trustworthiness? And the cases say there's indicia of trustworthiness if the things you're saying have a basis in fact aside from what you're saying. In other words, if someone goes in jail and says, I did it, and that's all they say, there's no way to corroborate what they did. But if they say, I did it with a baseball bat, and there's a baseball there, it's corroborated. If they say, I did it at 2 o'clock in the morning on September 3rd, and that's when it happened, it's corroborated. And what Ed Campbell says I did it. I did it by myself. Well, that's corroborated. That's what Eric Campbell got on the witness stand and said, that his father did it, and Eric was just there. Ed Campbell says he did it with a crossbow. The crossbow was in evidence. The medical examiner testified that it was done with a crossbow. Other details of the way he describes what happens have been corroborated. He testified that he's an artist and he wanted to make masks of the people's faces. Eric Campbell testified that that's what his father said. It's corroborated by Eric Campbell. Also corroborated by testimony from Detective McPhee about plaster of Paris being found in the car. So for those reasons, Your Honor, it's corroborated. It's clearly a statement against interest. All these things are statement against interest. I did drugs. That's a statement against interest. I beat children. That's a statement against interest. I killed the Faulkners. That's a statement against interest. Now, even if the court finds that that's not, we would argue that it should be admitted under the residual hearsay. And most importantly, Your Honor, it should be admitted under the 6th and 14th Amendment. The cases of Chambers v. Mississippi and the other constitutional cases, I cited to you that this is just such a crucial piece of evidence. Ed Campbell told the police that Eric Campbell didn't do this. And that's what Eric Campbell got up there and he told this jury. And if the jury is not allowed to hear that, it will deprive Eric Campbell of due process in this case. and it would constitute a significant constitutional violation. So for these reasons, Your Honor, we'd ask to submit all these, both these statements in, and to be allowed to play the videos for the jury and let them see all this.
Judge, as for Chambers versus Mississippi, in the statements that in the residual hearsay exception, this case specifically talks about, and I made this argument earlier, about the defendant and the declarant in that particular case. Basically, there was an argument that they were trying to subvert justice, and I believe that that's exactly what's going on here. There's certainly that argument that the state can make, a strong argument the state can make, because the defendant and his father knew, but certainly his father knew, that he was never going to stand trial for this case. He was never going to be here to testify. He was never going to be subject to cross-examination. And the general purpose of these rules is to put reliable information and evidence in front of the jury. This information, all of it, all of these statements that were given are not reliable, and that, and just because Eric Campbell says it so, doesn't also make it reliable. And there, again, the case directly on point for statements against interest and the residual hearsay, I handed up to the court during our case in chief when Captain Pendleton went over this again. The state v. Chaudhary, C-H-O-U-D-H-R-Y, 206 NC Act 418. And it just talks about that there has to be, first of all, reliable information. That the statements that are sought to get in have to be reliable, and they have to be against penal interest. And that if they're not reliable, then they don't come in. And against the statements against interest, again, the 6-part test just talks about that not only does the statement have to be reliable, but the person giving it has to be reliable. And there has been evidence put on by the defense in this case that Ed Campbell is not reliable. He's not a reliable source, at least by the Department of Social Services. We certainly believe that we've shown in these statements alone that he's not reliable and that there is no indicia of trustworthiness in any of these statements. And we ask that you keep all of them out, and you certainly keep out any video of these transports. There certainly the jury got a glimpse into what Ed Campbell sounded like on these jail calls. The defense put those in front of the jury, and they certainly got a glimpse into that for any non-hearsay. But the truth is these statements are being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, and they simply do not fit into the hearsay exception.
You know, the only piece I want to that is Ms. Katz says they manipulated, somehow suggesting that Eric Campbell is involved in some sort of manipulation, as though his and his father's plan was, if we get arrested, you immediately confess. I mean, what happened in this case, Eric Campbell got arrested. He immediately told the police exactly what happened, and what he told them was, my dad did all of this. Now, the state has gone to great lengths to point out that sometimes he got the order wrong, or he said things that his father had told him as though he saw them. But he immediately told the police exactly what happened. And Ed Campbell, in that interview that we just went through with Dr. Chaudhary, clearly has not spoken to his son. He's telling him, I want to speak to my son. So there isn't this group attempt. Now Ed Campbell, they're right. He is sometimes an unreliable person, and he's a manipulator, and those are perfectly reasonable ways to cross-examine him. They have lots of tools to cross-examine Ed Campbell's out-of-court statement. He's made a whole bunch of statements. They have a whole bunch of his recorded interviews. They've already put on a number of statements through Holly that he said during the assault. They can cross-examine his statement even though he's not here. What we cannot do, unless we're allowed to put on this video, is put this proof of Eric Campbell's innocence before the jury.
The court's going to find as follows. After taking into account Mr. Campbell's personal knowledge, his motivation to speak the truth, the nature and the character of his statement that he made in these trips, and the relationship of Edward Campbell to his son, Eric Campbell, that when you take a look at the statements, that although the statements on their face are against penal interest, Mr. Campbell clearly states. You know, I'm going to make life. You know, I know. I know I am. He goes on to say, I'm going to be in jail for the rest of my life. It also says in the statement, no, Eric shouldn't be going to jail. He shouldn't be in jail. He hasn't done anything. He has not. So if I die before that, which I don't plan on, but just in case, you keep that in mind. I think his primary motivation in making these statements was to benefit Eric Campbell. That when you take a look at these statements and circumstantial guarantees of trustworthiness, how they were made, and his relationship with the officers there, if those circumstantial guarantees are not present, that it's offered, said by the defendant, to show who Ed Campbell is, has been a real showing of who Mr. Campbell was in this case. But I don't think we'd be benefited by this particular evidence. I don't think this was used as a basis of any expert opinion so far. If it was prejudicial to the state if they did not have an opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Campbell. Much of the testimony which you want to offer in this case has been corroborated by the testimony of other witnesses in this case. Plus, there are other persons who could be called to corroborate this evidence. I beat my children. Well, we've got other children that are available to testify in this case to that. But I don't think that's an issue in this trial. The court does not find that the purpose of these rules in the interest of justice would best be served by the admission of these statements into evidence in this case, that its prejudicial effect greatly outweighs its probative value for the reasons sought to be introduced in this case, and therefore the Senate Rule 403 objection is sustained. Yes, sir. Y'all have further evidence?
Yes, sir.
Can you bring the jury, please?
Oh.
Brad Anderson, for the defendant.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would call Ms. Cindy May.
I do.
Good morning, Ms. May.
Good morning.
If you would state and spell your name, please.
Cindy May, M-A-Y.
And if you would tell us how you know Eric.
I'm a psychologist at Central Prison, and he's been on my unit for the past 2 years, a little over 2 years.
And if you would tell us a little bit about your background and training related to your work.
I have a bachelor degree in psychology from the University of Pittsburgh and a Master of Education in counseling psychology from the University of Houston. I've been licensed in North Carolina since 1990.
And what are you licensed?
As a licensed psychological associate.
And where are you currently employed?
Central Prison in Raleigh.
And what unit do you work on?
It's Unit 4200. It's the safekeepers who, they're the guys that have been charged but not, haven't gone to trial yet.
And what's the the layout or what goes on in that unit? What's that?
There's 24 cells. The inmates are usually out, or this is the mental health unit, so the patients are out on the unit unless they're in seclusion for some suicidal tendencies or in segregation for some consequences of a punishment. They're usually out on the floor during the day from about 7 in the morning until 7 at night with a couple of hours in during count. And we hold groups, we do individual counseling treatment team. There's a rec yard with a basketball court that they're not able to use right now. They have card games they can play. There's tables there where they eat right in the unit. The television.
Sorry.
The television.
Are there ever issues on the unit with violence or misbehavior?
Fairly regularly, yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I don't want to be heard.
Ladies, I'll ask you to the jury for just a few moments while they don't discuss the case among yourselves. It should be formal, express an opinion about this case during this time. Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, so from what I understand, all of this testimony would be about anything that has happened since Eric Campbell has been at the Department of Corrections. That's not at all relevant to what's happened on January the 1st of 2015. I don't believe she has made any, at least I don't have any report, any expert report, anything that she's based her opinion on as to his state of mind at the time of the offense. What has happened after January the 1st of 2015 is not relevant.
We disagree. Ms. May treated Eric Campbell for 2 years with post-traumatic stress disorder, something the state says he does not have. I certainly think that's relevant to this case. I'm not offering her as a forensic expert. I don't intend to ask her. I don't even know what her answers would be if she has an opinion as far as his mental state at the time of the crime. But what she can testify to is the diagnoses that were given in Central Prison that have already been testified to by multiple experts, and the things that she saw that are consistent with that, so the jury can consider that information in making that determination.
Dr. Chaudhary testified that there has been a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder at Central Prison. I think that Dr. Wolf would say that there's been a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder once he got to Central Prison, after he was arrested, after he is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, after these murders were committed. Your Honor, that is not relevant to the central issue that we have here, and that's exactly what relevance is supposed to be under 401. Means evidence tending to make a fact of consequence more probable or less probable. And her testifying as to what has happened on the unit is just not relevant to the issue at hand.
I would have testified to whatever her opinion is and what she did in order to perform like that. So we need to get to that. You can bring it to you.
Yes. Well, before we do that, I would assume I'm allowed to lay a foundation of what she does and who she is before.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. You bring the degree in. Maybe share.
Now, Ms. May, what was your role, or what is your role at Central Prison?
I'm a psychologist in the mental health unit.
And what is your job, and what are your job functions?
Treatment team, seeing the patients on a regular basis, individual therapy with patients, some group therapy, monitoring what's going on in the unit.
And how did you meet Eric Campbell?
Originally when he was on the admissions unit, and we knew that we were going to get him, so the psychiatrist that I work with on the unit, she and I went down to the admissions unit to meet him and talk to him a little bit about, he had been on the admissions unit for a very long time, I think up to 3 months, and that was he was locked up for 23 hours a day, and the safekeepers unit he would be out, so we wanted to kind of talk to him about how different it would be.
And why was he in the admission unit for that long?
It was immediately following his father's suicide, and they were concerned that he would also attempt suicides.
Oh, cool.
I'm not sure I heard that at all. Why was he kept in admissions that long?
For safety.
And did you say that there was a concern about suicide?
Yes. He was on one-to-one observation. There was someone sitting at his cell, and we don't do that on any other unit, so he had to stay there.
I see. And that was while he was on the admission unit.
Right.
Now, once he came to your unit, how often would you interact with him?
Daily. I'm on the unit sometimes up to anywhere from 3 to 5 hours of the day. So there was a daily interaction. There was group therapy when I ran it, and individual therapy.
Was there a team of people that were involved in his diagnosis and treatment?
Yes, there's a treatment team. There's the psychiatrist, myself. Now we have a social worker. She's only been on the unit for maybe 9 months. Nursing and custody were all part of the team.
And at some point, did the treatment team give him a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yes.
Did you agree with that diagnosis?
I do, and I would add with dissociative symptoms.
And what do you mean by that?
Sometimes PTSD patients are able to dissociate from what's going on around them in order to protect themselves. It's a coping mechanism. And Eric started talking to us early on about not feeling like he was really there. And the more he talked about it, we realized he was dissociating.
And do you know how many doctors or mental health professionals besides yourself at Central Prison diagnosed him with post-traumatic stress disorder?
I believe there were 5.
And what was, in your opinion, what was the basis for that post-traumatic stress? And what was the traumatic event or events that were the basis of that diagnosis?
For the most part, childhood abuse.
Is she an expert?
How loud is that?
for the most part, the childhood abuse that he experienced.
And did you see symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder during your treatment with Mr. Campbell?
Yes, he talked almost, well, at least weekly in sessions about the dreams that he was having, and that's very common with PTSD patients. There was also a time where there was an older man on the floor, and Eric, at that, for about a month's time, rarely came out of his room because this man reminded him of his father. There was some anxiety, there was some depression. He was resistant to therapy in that he didn't want to talk about childhood memories, which is common with PTSD patients.
Now, when Mr. Campbell's under your care, did he participate in the therapy session?
Yes.
And what was that like?
As I said, he was resistant in the beginning, but I'd say after about 6 to 9 months, he started opening up more and talking about what was going on with him, mostly about his dreams, sometimes what was going on in the unit. He admitted to things that happened in his childhood. He started talking more about that.
Now, when you say he was resistant at the beginning, what do you mean by that?
He was quiet, which he was taught to be quiet. He was taught not to talk. He was taught not to feel.
Go on.
You may answer again. I'm sorry, I didn't try to hear all your answer. What do you mean by he was resistant?
He was taught not to feel and not to experience emotions. He was taught to stay quiet. So he was doing what he was taught, which was staying quiet. And he also, if he had talked to me about childhood memories, in his mind that was him disobeying his father. So he was very resistant to that, even though
his father had committed suicide?
Yes, very.
Is that, were you confused by that, or did you find that odd?
No, not at all. His father had total control over him for his whole life. So just because now the father is gone, the training was still there.
And what was Eric like on the unit? What kind of things did he do?
He was quiet at first. He was very mannerly, never caused any problems with anybody. As he got more comfortable on the unit, and as we talked more in therapy and he talked more about his life and how he nurtured the younger children in his family, we then, if we had a patient who didn't know how to read, we would ask Eric to help him with reading, and Eric would. I ran different groups, and one group I did on meditation that Eric ran for me. I was in the group with him, but he liked being able to share his experiences with different things like meditation or origami. He was very good at that, and he would show the other patients on the unit.
Now, you said he led a meditation group. Is that common? Is that something other people on the unit have done?
No.
And did you ever witness when you were on the unit anyone be violent towards Eric?
Yes.
Objection.
You're not asking her.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'll excuse you to the jury room for a few moments. While you're there, don't discuss this case among yourselves, and should you form express an opinion. That an issue in this case during this time. Take your seat.
Ms. May, if you would describe the violent incident you saw related to Mr.
There was an incident where the patients were sitting at the tables eating, and I was in the treatment team room, it has a big window facing the unit. The stairs come down facing me. A patient ran down the steps and just started hitting and punching and pushing, and every other patient either stood up and moved away, or some went towards this man to get him. Eric got in a fetal position under a table.
And was anything about that significant to your diagnosis of treatment of him?
No, I'm sure that brought back memories of him being abused, and so he needed to protect himself.
I mean, is there anything about the way he reacted you found significant based on his diagnosis of post-traumatic stress?
Well, in other words, with PTSD, that reminded him of being abused as a child, so his reaction was to protect himself.
And did you find that consistent with his diagnosis?
Yes, yes.
Your Honor, that would be the proffer on this issue. I'd also note that this information has previously come in through our
Your Honor, she said it didn't at all go to her opinion, to her diagnosis or her treatment. I don't believe it's relevant at all. I think for her to say why, what was in Eric's mind is certainly speculation. She can't say, why he acted a certain way, that it was in conformity with anything. And I don't think it's relevant.
Well, Your Honor, I do think it's relevant. And she did say that it was consistent with his PTSD and the way he reacted to it. And it's already come in. It's something she personally witnessed. I think it's relevant to both her treatment of him and to the case. And I believe Dr. Hagen, I don't remember if it was Dr. Hagen or Dr. Chaudhary, but they specifically said in their testimony that was evidence of Eric's post-traumatic stress disorder, and certainly a witness being able to say that did in fact happen. She saw it. This is what she saw. Is relevant to proving that.
Right.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Sustain.
Your Honor, I would note our exception under the 6th and 14th Amendment.
No, you bring it here.
Has there ever been a discipline problem on you?
Never. Never, not at all.
Were there any things you saw in the way he interacted on the unit that you thought were consistent with his diagnosis of post-traumatic stress?
I saw him hide under a table once when another inmate was violent on the...
Sustain, go on.
Now, how confident are you in the diagnosis and the treatment of care you undertook for Mr. Campbell if he has post-traumatic stress?
Very. That was one of my specialties when I was in private practice.
And I think in one of the notes it said chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. Is that correct?
In one of my notes?
I'm going to be mistaken about that. If you can describe, what, when you say Eric has post-traumatic stress disorder, that's your diagnosis of the unit, what that means. I mean, what does that diagnosis mean?
It's the way the trauma that he experienced as a child.
You may answer.
The trauma he experienced as a child now causes him emotional distress.
No further questions. Thank you, Ms. Mann.
Ms. Smith, please stay.
Dr. May, you were part
I'm not a doctor, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Miss May. You were part of Eric's treatment team, is that correct?
Right,
So you weren't involved in any sort of forensic exam of him, isn't that correct?
right,
And as such, you did not review any discovery in this case, is
Right.
that correct?
Mhm.
And the treatment team only saw him after he had been arrested, is that correct?
right,
Charged with 2 murders and other things, is that correct?
yes,
That he had, at the very least, witnessed, if not participated in 2 brutal murders, is that correct?
yes,
Facing at least life in prison for what he's charged with, isn't that correct?
yes,
All of what you based your diagnosis on was self-reporting, isn't that correct?
and collaboration with the other professionals.
And the professionals who also did not review any of the discovery in this
I don't know if they did or not.
But that's not anything that you discussed in your treatment team
No.
meetings.
Mm-mm.
I don't have anything further.
Redirect.
Thank you. And Mr. Campbell's on your unit all day, every day, is that correct?
Yes,
Are there always, professionals and staff on that unit?
yes.
No further questions. Thank you.
I don't have anything.
Okay, understand. For the expert,
This was Nicholas Campbell.
You solemnly swear that you should give the court and jury should have the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Campbell, would you please tell the jury who you are?
My name is Nicholas Campbell. I'm the son of Edward Campbell and the brother of Eric Campbell.
And do me a favor, hold that microphone just a little bit closer.
Better?
Yes. And you said that you're Eric's brother, is that right?
Yes.
How much older are you than Eric?
I'm 4 years older.
And tell us where you grew up.
I grew up in Florida until I was 7, and then we moved to Texas in my later life.
Now, where do you live now?
I live here in Raleigh, North Carolina,
And why did you move to Raleigh?
to support Eric and also a change of scenery.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a general contractor.
Well, are you a licensed general contractor?
No, sir.
I'm sorry?
No, sir.
You do construction work or?
Yes.
Just describe what you do.
Paint houses, roofing repairs, tile work, anything of the sort.
So all kinds of work.
Yes, sir.
And you stay busy doing that in the Raleigh area?
Very.
Now, was your mother in the home when you were growing up?
Not really.
Explain what you mean.
From about as far back as I can remember, she was disabled, wheelchair bound, and I was taking care of her.
And how old were, do you remember how old you were when your mom, was there a time in your life when you remember your mother before she had an aneurysm?
Hardly.
So you don't remember a lot before that. Most of your memories are after that.
Yes.
Do you know about when that was?
When what was?
When the
I remember the day it happened.
You remember when it happened?
Yes.
But you don't know how old you were?
I do remember.
How old were you?
8 years old.
Okay. Now, after that, who took care of you? Who was responsible for your primary care after that?
My father.
How long did your mother live in the home with you all? After she had her?
4 years.
And was Eric alive at that time?
I'm sorry, Eric.
You said you were 8 years old, so he would have been 4 when your mom had the aneurysm. Is that right?
Yes.
And so, your father was his primary caregiver as well? Is that right?
Yes.
Did you have contact with your grandparents very often?
My dad disconnected us from them.
And what do you mean by that?
He did not like my mother's parents.
And what was the result of that?
Excommunication.
So was it just you didn't see them very often?
No, sir. He did not like us talking to them.
And what about aunts and uncles?
He would not really condone us talking to anyone else.
And where did you live? Where you lived in Texas, was it close to aunts and uncles and grandparents, or were you far away?
Very far.
So in your home as a child, immediately after your mom had her aneurysm for the 4 years, who was in the home?
Restate the question, please.
Well, who lived in the home with you and Eric? Was it you and Eric and your dad and your mom, just the 4 of you living in the home after she had the aneurysm?
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about the atmosphere in the home when you were a child.
We were required to do whatever our father told us to do. Included doing chores around the house, cooking dinner for the entire family.
What was your father's personality like with you? How did he interact with you?
Authoritatively, we did exactly what he said, and we were punished severely if we did not obey him.
When you say severe punishment, what do you mean by that?
It could be followed as lightly as yelling, or we could be hit at any time.
When you say hit with what?
Either his fist or whichever object he had close to him.
And would this come with some warning, or was it predictable?
No warning.
Was it predictable?
No.
And what impact did that have on you?
I was scared of him. I disconnected myself from him as a protective measure.
When did you do that? How old were you?
When I disconnected from him, I would always try to avoid him, but as I learned how to avoid his abuse, I would stop talking to him, stop initiating conversation with him, and just did whatever he asked me.
So you just sort of stayed away or complied?
Yes.
And what about Eric? How did he respond?
I was made example of, and he followed suit. I was the scapegoat.
Now, did you also hear about your father?
Yes.
And do you remember going into protective custody when you were a child?
Yes, I do.
Were you in child protective custody for accusations you made, or was it somebody else who made them?
It was someone else that made them.
Did you ever make accusations against your father?
I did not. I lied.
Why was that?
I was afraid he would punish me if I did not say the right things to the social service worker.
And were you taught not to say things about your father?
Yes.
careful about that. I'm supplying with the answers.
Okay. How did your father treat Eric?
He was rough with them. He had to do exactly what he said.
Have you witnessed any acts of violence by your father against Eric?
Yes.
And how did Eric respond to your father's assault?
When my dad attacked us, we would have to pray to his mercy and let him finish.
Have you ever seen injuries to Eric after the assault?
Yes.
And have you seen injuries to the other children, the younger siblings?
Yes.
Were your father's explosions only physical, or could they be otherwise?
Mainly physical.
What did you decide at some point was your best defense against your father?
I would disconnect myself from him.
You stay away.
Yes.
And at some point, did you leave the home?
Yes.
And how did that impact you?
I felt that as I have become an individual, I had my own personality.
Now, did you try to maintain a relationship with your family members as well?
Yes, I did.
And as you got older, did you ever move back into the home?
I had to move back into the home after I had moved out. 8 months later, I had to come back.
But did you move out again?
Yes.
Now, there's been some evidence in this case about a camping trip or discussions of a camping trip. Had you all ever been on a camping trip before?
Yes.
And was that something that Eric participated in with you and your father?
Yes.
And when you went on those camping trips, would you take all kinds of different items to hunt with and camp with?
Sustained.
Well, what kinds of items did you take when you went on a camping trip?
We took tents. We took fishing poles, spears, makeshift weapons, crossbow, gun.
When you went on these camping trips, who decided what you did?
My father did.
And would he tell you in advance what you were going to do or how you were going to do things?
No, he made up the plan as he went.
And what would you and Eric do?
We just followed whatever he said.
Now, tell us a little bit about Eric's relationship with your younger siblings.
Eric was wonderful with the children. He was loving and compassionate and enjoyed spending every moment with them.
And how often did he care for them?
All the time. A more full-time job.
Was that just during a period of time or just when he was at home?
When he was just at home? Rephrase.
Now, were you aware at some point that did you find out that your father got arrested in Missouri County?
Yes.
And how did you find out about that?
I found out a week later when I didn't hear or know where he was, and I looked it up.
And when you found out about that, at some point, did you go visit him?
Yes.
And did you realize that was it related to any events you heard about or knew about?
I had no idea what had conspired.
Well, and did you have any contact with Holly, your stepmother, immediately after you learned about your father being in jail?
No.
So you had discussions with her. Who did you talk to about what had happened? After you found out your father was in jail?
I talked to my brother.
Okay. Did you talk to your father?
I had talked to him.
At some point, did you talk to your father about that?
Yes, in jail.
Now, there's been some testimony about your going to the house on the night that he and Holly Campbell were having this argument, this fight.
Mhm.
And do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And what happened?
I had preset a date to go to the house prior. It might have been a day before. And I had walked in the house. My dad yelled out my name.
And what did you hear?
There was commotion upstairs. And he had...
How did you... What impact did that have on you? I mean, what was your response to that?
My dad was ordinarily violent, and I thought nothing of it. It was just another day. And
was that something you had heard before the commotion upstairs?
yes.
And did you know the extent of the violence that night when you left the home?
No.
And why did you leave?
I did not want to get involved.
When your father was arrested, when you visited him, what were...
I object to it.
Well, did you visit your dad? Did you have visits with your dad while he was in jail?
Yes.
And why did you consider getting him out?
He had threatened to kill himself.
And were you concerned about other things?
I was, if I did not get him out, he might come after me.
Now, when you did you ultimately help bond your father out?
Yes.
And what was your expectation when you bonded him out? What did you expect him to do?
He stated he had evidence to Holly's infidelity, and he could get his children and keep his family together.
And how was he going to get his children? I mean, what proceedings would he have to go through to get his children?
I'm not familiar.
After your father was released from custody, did you have contact with him?
Yes.
And did you expect him to go to court?
Yes.
Objection again.
How much money had you invested in your father's farm?
$6,500.
And was that a lot of money to you?
Yes.
What did you find out ultimately that your father's plans were?
I never found out what his plans were.
Well, why did you not go on a trip with your father?
I knew my dad was not emotionally right, and I was frightened of him.
I don't have further questions.
Ms. Griffith, go.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Campbell, with respect to the abuse that you testified to today, did you ever report that to a teacher?
No, sir.
Did you ever report it to a counselor?
No, sir.
Did you ever report it to the principal?
No, sir.
And as a matter of fact, the first time that you reported any such abuse was after your brother was arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
Yes.
Okay. And as a matter of fact, your dad loved you very much. Didn't he?
Yes.
And he told you that. He called himself Daddy, and you called him Daddy, didn't you?
Yes.
And you went and saw him at the jail frequently in the time when he was incarcerated after his arrest for assault and Holly. Is that right?
Yes.
And during many of those conversations, you laughed and joked. Is that correct?
We try to keep the conversation light.
Okay. And with respect to the, you've been here all week, right?
This week.
Yes. And with respect to these conversations at the jail, he was frustrated with you because at first he didn't think that you were really working that hard at getting him out, right?
Correct.
Basically, he thought that you had other priorities and not him. Is that right?
Yes.
And that as things kind of started to, look like he was going to get out of jail, the conversations got really light and fun, didn't they? Did you talk to him the day before Thanksgiving?
I don't recall.
Okay. With respect to were you and your brother holding Holly's cell phone during the time while your dad was in custody?
No.
You and your dad, where was the cell phone?
I do not know.
Now that's not true, is it? Did you and your brother have a cell phone wrapped in a Tupperware container in aluminum foil?
No.
And you never expected your dad to go to court, did you?
I hoped he would.
You hoped he would, but you were a participant in a plan to help him avoid going to court. Is that right?
No.
Did you switch cars with your father?
No.
Did you start driving the Toyota Tundra?
Yes.
And you allowed Eric to drive the Nissan?
Yes.
And Eric drove it to an apartment complex? Didn't he?
Yes.
Where your father met him with a Suburban that had been stolen from the New Waverly School District. Is that right?
Yes.
And you went back afterwards and got the Nissan, didn't you?
Yes.
Because that was the plan all along, wasn't it?
There was no plan.
Well, with respect to the plan, you were part of the support network for your father, weren't you? As far as him hiding out in Huntsville. Is that right?
No.
Did you go up there with your brother and meet him and have margaritas?
No.
So when your brother testified about that earlier in the week, he was not telling the truth?
I did not go with my dad to Huntsville.
Did you ever meet your dad in a field or a park near an airport?
I did.
And where was that?
Manville.
And how far is Manville from Huntsville?
Approximately an hour.
Okay. And he got there because either you or your brother drove him there. Is that right?
I do not know.
Well, you don't know because you don't want to say. Is that correct?
That's not true.
Okay. But your dad didn't have a car. Did he?
I do not know.
Your dad was entirely dependent upon you and your brother for his support during that time. Is that right?
I'm not quite sure.
And with respect to a camping trip, you and your dad, did you normally pack alginate on a camping trip?
Alginate?
Alginate.
What is that?
It's used for making molds, isn't it?
I do not know.
Okay. Do you normally pack plaster of Paris on a camping trip?
No.
And this was in the cold of the winter, is that right?
Oh, please rephrase.
Was this around Christmas time of December of 2014?
Yes.
And your father was packing a scuba suit, a dry suit, a cold weather dry suit, is that correct?
Yes.
So with respect to whether or not he was going to court, you hoped he would, but you knew he wasn't. Is that a fair statement?
I had pushed him to go to court.
But you aided him in not going to court.
That is not true.
You just said that you went and picked up the Nissan afterwards. Is that right?
Yes.
And did you ever do anything to alert the authorities as to what your brother and your dad were planning?
I did not know of a plan.
During your direct examination, you said he stated he had evidence of Holly's infidelity. Is that
Yes.
right?
Hmm?
And you had a conversation with him that was a telephone, didn't you?
Yes.
And that he gave you specific advice about not to hand the phone over to the wrong person. Is that correct?
I did not know where the phone was.
Because with respect to the case against Holly, you had clearly taken your dad's side. Is that right?
No.
You were concerned that Holly was going to get the house. Is that right?
Yes.
You were looking for Holly while your dad was in jail. Is that right?
Yes.
You were looking on her so you could find her whereabouts and know where she was in case your dad or any of you or your brother needed to run into her. Is that correct?
No, sir.
No. Why would you look for Holly?
To talk to her.
To talk to her. But you couldn't find her ever, could you?
No.
And you and your brother and your dad suspected that she had taken flight to Hillsborough, North Carolina to get away from you, didn't you?
No.
And you knew that when your brother and your dad left out from Texas, that was where they were going.
No.
Did you ever visit the medical center in Texas to go look for her?
No.
I don't have any other questions.
Be ready.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell, you said that you
raised by your father, Edward Campbell. Was it you and Eric were, is that right?
Yes.
Who set the tone? Mr. Waters asked you about the tone of the meetings in the jail. Who determined what the tone of the atmosphere was throughout your life?
My father did.
And how old are you?
I'm 28.
And what do you do every day?
What do I do every day?
Yeah, do you go to work every day?
Yes.
Were you, after you met with your father at that field, did you ever see him again?
No.
Did you hear from him again
No.
until he was arrested?
No.
When he asked you to talk to Holly, what was his specific request that he asked you for?
He wanted to know her whereabouts and to give her a letter.
And did he ask her for money? Or to help with his bail?
Yes.
You mentioned that you were afraid of your father.
Yes, very.
Was Eric afraid of your father?
Yes.
And how was Eric when he was around your father?
Submissive.
Have you ever seen Eric commit an act of violence against anyone?
No.
Objection. Cool. Have you ever seen him commit an act of violence
No.
against anyone? Nothing further.
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. You said you didn't ever hear from your father again after you saw him here in Texas. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's because both he and Eric got rid of their cell phones that day, didn't they?
Yes.
And they were exclusively going to use walkie-talkies. Is that right?
I don't know.
And they had no plans to contact you until afterwards. Is that correct?
I don't know.
You said during your direct testimony that you disconnected yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But you came back frequently, didn't you? You came back and did laundry. Is that right?
On my prerogative, yes.
All right. On your prerogative, is that what you said?
Yes.
Because your prerogative, you could make a decision. Is that right?
I can make a decision, yes.
Just like Eric can make a decision. You went and saw your dad 6 times with your brother. Is that right? In jail.
I believe so.
Yes. And during that time, you began plans for him to get out of jail. Is that correct?
Yes.
You discussed the evidence that you had of Holly's infidelity. Is that right?
I don't know.
And you discussed the equitable distribution case, the case where Holly was trying to get part of the house from your father. Is that right?
Yes.
You discussed the custody case.
Yes.
And you discussed the fact that the civil complaint had incorporated the criminal allegations. Is that right?
Can you please dumb that down for me?
Well, you knew that when your dad got out, he was facing going to prison for 5 years.
I did not.
You didn't think that because you knew your dad was never going to stand trial, right?
That's not true.
You knew that he was never coming back?
No.
I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Campbell, has this been a very difficult situation for you?
Yes.
And have you done your best to support Eric through this?
Yes.
Why'd you do that?
Because he's the only family I ever had. He's the person I knew my whole life, and supported me through. We supported each other through my dad's violence. And, we leaned on each other and kept our heads up.
And you, whatever the evidence is, you never left Texas during that period, did you?
No.
When was the first time you heard about this case?
Charles Adams had called me on the phone and told me the next day.
Nothing further. No.
Thanks, sir. You can stand there. Yes, sir.
This is called Sherry Barnes.
This on this whether evidence you should give the court and the jury shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. You do.
Good afternoon, Ms. Barnes.
Hi.
You will state and spell your name for the court.
Sherry Barnes, SHERRI-BARNES.
And who are you, Ms. Barnes?
I am Eric Campbell's aunt. Edward Campbell was my brother.
Now, I want to start in 2011, when Eric was 18 years old. Do you remember going to the Ed Campbell and Eric and Nick's home in 2011?
I do.
If you could tell us what were the circumstances of you going?
Occasionally I would pass through Texas because of work. It depended on what I was doing, but I would always try to make some time, even if it was just a day or two, to visit.
And during that time, did you have any arguments with your brother?
My brother and I historically had quite a lot of arguments.
Was there an incident related to ducks that you were coming? Was there an incident related to the ducks that you recall?
My brother and I had been talking, and he got up all of a sudden, and because he heard something, and he went to the back door of the house, and he got really irritated, and went and got a gun, and I asked him what he was doing. He said he was going out to get the ducks because he was sick and tired of them going to the bathroom in the pool. So he was going to make sure they didn't do that anymore.
And what happened next?
He went out the door, and I went to go after him, and the boys were, I think, just in the other room, but I heard one of them say, "Just let him go." And so I just stepped back into the house, and he came back in later.
Do you know what he did while he was outside?
I'm assuming he shot ducks because I heard the gun.
Did you hear gunshots?
I did.
Did that bother you?
I'm an animal lover, whether it's ducks or dogs or cats, so yeah, it bothered me. I think there's
other ways you can deal with things like that besides killing something.
Now, did you see Eric while you were on that visit?
I did.
And do you know if Eric was living in the home at that time?
I am not 100% certain, but I think he was. I know that when I arrived there, I knocked on the door. I hadn't told them I was coming. I had been trying to call my brother for quite some time, and he didn't answer the phone. So I just showed up. And when I knocked on the door, it was Eric that actually came to the door and let me in.
And what was Eric like during that visit? He was around 18 or 19.
I have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. They're all grown now. But one of the things that stood out to me was Eric was very childlike, which surprised me for his age. He was amazing with the kids, and I think of siblings not wanting to take care of younger siblings all the time, and he was the opposite. He was very nurturing with the kids. But I think one of the things that stood out to me the most on that trip was when something happened with one of the kids or they wanted something, it wasn't Holly or my brother that they went to. They always went to Eric. And I had actually said something to my brother about the fact that those were his children, not Eric's children. And I gave Eric the opportunity. I felt bad, so I said, I'm going to be here all day. Why don't you go do something with your friends, and I will stay here with the younger kids. And they had these big chalks, and we were going to just go out and do art on the sidewalk in front of the house. And Eric said, no, I'll just stay here with you guys. I don't get to see you that much. So we stayed and we watched a Disney movie. I don't remember what it was, but it was a kid's movie. And then went out front with the chalks, and we spent, I think, several hours out there just drawing chalks. And Eric wanted to show me how well he could kick the soccer ball and what he could do with the soccer ball. And at one point he said, watch how far I can kick it. And it just kind of, I guess I would have expected a younger kid to be acting like that, but Eric's who people want him to see him as is not who I have ever seen him as, so I don't know what else to say.
The state has been marked as Defense Exhibit 55.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Barnes, I'm handing you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 55. Is that a picture you took that day?
It is.
And is it a fair and accurate picture of what you saw that day?
It is.
And would it help illustrate your testimony?
It would.
Your Honor, this time I would move to admit Defense Exhibit 55.
No objection.
Well,
And what's in that picture?
It's Eric in front of the house in Texas holding the soccer ball.
And was that when he was playing with the ball and showing you how far he could kick it?
Yeah.
And he's 18 or 19 in that picture?
I think he might have been 19.
Your Honor, I would ask to publish this to the jury through the sheriff. Thank you, sir.
I think it was a signal from one of the jury members. I don't know.
We just couldn't hear her response to the age.
I think he was about 19.
thank you so much for doing that. Anytime that you can hear what you're supposed to hear, let us know. You have to hear what you're supposed to hear. You have to see what you're supposed to see. And the only way I know if you're not is if you make that known. So please don't sit silent.
next time you visited Eric and the rest of the family in April of 2014?
Yes, it was.
And was Eric 21 years old?
Yes, he would have been 21 at that time.
Now, what were the circumstances of that visit?
It was a similar thing. At that time, I was working for an athletic racing company, and they held events all over eastern Canada. And I was going from, I had been out in Arizona and California, and I was going back to Canada for that event, those events. And so I stopped. I took the southern route so that I could stop again and spend a couple days.
Now, on either of those visits, did Ed Campbell ever talk to you about making that?
He did. We were, I think, in the backyard. He was doing something. I don't remember. I think it had something to do with metal things that he made or something like that. But he had some bucket, and he was doing something in the bucket. And we were talking, and he just randomly said something about.
And after that conversation, did Mr. Ed Campbell ever ask you to purchase Sudafed?
He did.
And what were the circumstances of that?
He was complaining that he had these sore-like things on his arms, and he was complaining that they were really itchy and that they were bothering him, and he needed to get some medicine, and did I mind to stop? And I said no. So we stopped, and when we got inside the store, he said, "Oh, I left my wallet in the car. Do you mind getting it, and I'll pay you back?" And I said, "No problem." So we went back to this counter at the back, and I don't take even over-the-counter drugs. I'm more of a holistic kind of person. So he said, I said, "Why do you have to go to the back?" And he said, "Oh, because you have to get it from the pharmacist." And I said, "Is it a prescription?" And he said, No, it's over-the-counter." So I went back and I got, with him, he walked with me, but I went back and got some Sudafed for him. He said it would help with the itching and the kind of allergic kinds of things he had going on his body.
And do you know, did either you or him have to show identification for him?
I think I actually had to sign a paper or something.
And did he tell you why he wanted you to sign the paper and not him?
Not that I recall, no.
Now, during that visit in April of 2014, did you talk with Eric Campbell about your work?
I did. I had told him that with the work that I do, there's a lot of kids his age there, mostly boys, but some girls. And they are part of the crew, so we go from city to city in Canada, and mostly on ski mountains, and we set up these race courses, and then thousands of people come to race those events. So we're there sometimes for a couple weeks at a time, setting up, and then the crew that's doing all of that are typically younger boys, probably, I think the youngest we've ever had was 17, and the older ones are more in the mid-20s to late 20s. And I said, you know, it would be a good experience for you, get you out of Texas, because he'd never really been out of Texas very much in his teen years or anything. And I thought it would give him a chance to, I don't know, I guess see something different in what he was in at the time. Sorry, I thought it would give him a chance to see something different.
And did he ultimately come with you for a summer in Canada?
Well, he didn't come with me when I left right then, but he did come later, yes.
And was this during school time or was this during the summer?
Well, when I was there, it would have been during school time, but when he came, it was in the summer.
And do you know well, during that visit, was he in school?
I'm not 100% certain, but I think he may have been.
Did you talk to him at all about school?
On that visit, I don't know if we talked a lot about school. I know I had asked him what he thought he wanted to do, and what did he think he was good at. And he didn't seem overly confident about, I guess, his skill set. But we had discussion later when he came to Canada more about that.
Now, this Spartan race in Canada, I mean, is it just during the summer, or does it go all through the year?
It's just during the summer. The weather up there doesn't allow you to hold events during the winter.
And who, did y'all hire folks to come help set up those races?
Yes.
And what kind of folks would you hire?
A lot of students, some of them from, Europe, some of them from within Canada. Quite a few from the UK, because the UK has this program called Gap Year, where when someone graduates from high school, it's normal procedure that they take a year off, and their family encourages it for them to go and, I guess, explore the world before they start college or university.
So would someone have to drop out of school to come work with y'all for the summer?
I guess if they had summer school, they would have to.
Now, when Mr. Campbell came and joined y'all, was he paid for his work that summer?
They gave him a small stipend. I think they did it more as a favor for me than out of a real need. I really wanted to try and connect with Eric. I wanted to spend time with him. I wanted to try and get to know my brother's kids a little more than I did at that point in time.
And how did he perform at Spartan Race when he was working with you?
I had some concerns when he first came, because he was kind of passive, and most of the boys are more type A. They're jocks who are used to doing competitive sports, and they're doing Spartan Race because it's, I guess it's exciting for them. It's an experience for them. A lot of them are runners, so they get to be able to run the races too, and that's sort of an added plus. And when Eric came, it's a group environment. Everybody's on top of each other 24/7. We're working really long hours. You're working outdoors in inclement weather, so there's snow sometimes still, even in May. And they get a little rowdy, and some of the boys are a bit rougher than others. And initially I had some concerns about whether it was the right thing for me to have invited Eric to come up there, because he was more reserved. And he sort of stood on the periphery and watched, kind of the goings-on of the other boys. But, sorry.
Question?
If you could tell us some more.
Over the course of the summer, Eric became much more social, and there was a young man who was with us who I had been told had some type of a psychological problem. I think maybe it was Asperger's, but I don't know. And he was struggling very hard to fit in with the other boys. Boys can be kind of hard on each other sometimes, especially at that age. And I was really proud to see Eric sort of step up and befriend the boy that the other boys were making fun of. And so I asked permission to have that boy put onto my crew, so that and have Eric on my crew, so that that boy could have someone that he could be friends with during this period of time that we were working. And my boss agreed, and so they came. I was able to have both of them on my crew and have them work in my team.
And did Eric work hard that summer?
Eric worked very hard. That is one thing I can say. I never had to tell him to work harder, or, okay, your break is long enough now, let's get back to work, or that kind of thing. I thought it was probably because he was trying to impress me, or because he was his way of maybe saying thanks for bringing me here. But I don't know that I analyzed it much beyond that.
Your Honor, I'm about to move into some material that will take longer than 5 minutes, if this would be a convenient time.
Okay. Combination. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our lunch and recess at this point. During this time, it is your duty not to talk among yourselves about this case. Do not talk to the parties, the witnesses, or the lawyers about anything at all. It's your further duty not to talk to anyone else, to allow anyone else to talk with you, to say anything in your presence about this case. If anyone communicates with you in any way, in any fashion, you need to let the sheriff know about it when you come in. Don't do any individual research or investigation on your own about any issue touching on this trial. Stay away from your smartphones. And do not form or express an opinion about this case during this time. That, while everyone else will remain seated, I'll excuse these 17 of you and ask that you return and assemble in the jury room at 2:30 this afternoon. Again, we go by that clock.